Advice that made me $2 million. Now, first, you need to hear some of the backstory. There is no psychologist or highly successful business person in the world that would have ever said, Tiffany has the perfect emotional makeup and skill set to build and run multiple multi-million dollar businesses and have a worldwide top podcast. I'm risk adverse. My number one priority is always to feel safe and secure as a result of my traumatic childhood. I'm an empath, introvert, intuitive who's highly sensitive, and I can take everything to heart. And you'll love this one. I'm pretty lazy. I'm not some type A personality who gets off on working all the time, doing all the things and being competitive. In fact, all of that gives me a rash. You get the picture here. When my first business wasn't budging at all, and here I was working 12 hours a day, over-delivering to my 2 clients, and desperately trying to figure out how to stop trading my time for money, I called my Lebanese law of attraction coach in a full-blown entrepreneurial meltdown, which we all know how those sound and look. And in his calming, beautiful Lebanese accent, he said, Tiffany, how we operate in one area of our lives is how we operate in all areas of our lives. That was my terrible Lebanese accent. This took me at least 10 minutes to process. So we started to examine how I operate in my intimate relationships, friendships, with money, with my personal goals, at the gym, with pleasure. There was an undeniable toxic thread. And the great news here is once we identify the problem, we can get to work on the solution. If you're tired of hearing the same old basic mindset and motivational fluff talk, you've come to the right show. Welcome to ProjectME with Tiffany Carter, the podcast, where we dish on everything from managing that crazy brain of yours to manifesting abundance to my straightforward, actionable steps that will make you major money online. Now, I'm not your typical multimillionaire entrepreneur. It takes a small village to keep my anxiety and depression in check. I'm inherently disorganized with an intense obsession with office supplies. Your girl here is a digital marketing content expert who's generated over $200 million in sales. I promise by tuning in twice a week, you will get a much needed refreshing dose of truth, clarity, and cash making advice. Now let's get to it. I just had a client come to me last week who got majorly screwed by not having boundaries in her business. And she was so pissed at herself. She was pissed she didn't hire me sooner because this could have prevented this. And she lost money, and she also lost a lot of time obsessing over it, being upset over it, talking about it. And she didn't have a contract in place with her private clients. And on top of that, she didn't make sure she collected the money up front for her services, and she was collecting it after. It doesn't go well when you are in a type of business where you're selling your intellectual property. That's what I'm doing here with you guys. You're buying my knowledge. You're buying my strategic brain. You're buying how I know how to get clients in cash for your business, how you can grow it and scale it to multiple 6 figures, 7 figures. You can't retract that back once you've given it. And so she got screwed by this person. And I said to her, you know what? You have to get screwed with your boundaries, whether it's your personal life or professional life, in order to fuel you to say, you know what, I'm not doing that anymore. Because obviously she was in resistance. She knew she didn't have a contract. She knew she should probably be charging in advance. Most of us do know these things, but we're in resistance because we don't want to turn someone off, upset them, make them feel like we don't trust them. We don't want to do the adulting work and the tedious stuff because it feels hard and it's not fun. And we'll avoid stuff until we pay a big enough price for it, and then we do something about it. So unfortunately, it's actually a good thing when you get screwed by your own boundaries that you've been resisting, because it makes you do the damn thing. I'm excited to share this incredible interview with Barb Nangle. Who doesn't love saying the name Barb? She's a boundaries coach, and she specializes in working with ambitious women, but who are also highly sensitive. There's such a nuance because you don't normally think of a high-powered, go-getting, driven woman is someone who's also sensitive, but we are, and I'm one of them. And the conversation is incredible. This is going to help you learn how to establish boundaries that are going to make your life easier, smoother, your business more profitable. This is in all areas of your life. I can't wait for you to hear from her. Real quick. 2 ways to work with me right now. There's some big announcements coming soon, but you want to take action right now and stop toe dipping in your business. My winter applications for my 2-month private business coaching program are closing very soon. Swipe up. That link's in the show notes. Second way, my ProjectME Posse business coaching membership is having a flash sale right now, and I've added a brand new option. You can join for a year and save on 2 months, so get 2 months for free, plus get a semi-private coaching session with me, which is worth $2,500. That link is also in the show notes. The great thing about the Posse is you get weekly live trainings from me and other special guest experts. You get a membership portal of over 200 prior live trainings, and all of these are strategically designed to get you from $0 to $15,000 a month consistently. Really, everything is in there that you need. It's a matter of, are you going to show up and take advantage of the information, of the support, of the coaching, of all the stuff that we share in there and the collaboration with the other members? And I think you will, because you know what's at stake if you don't. You'll just get more of the same. You'll keep buying more self-paced courses that you don't finish or that are sitting in your inbox. You'll buy more books. You'll save more posts on Instagram, and not much is going to happen. And this is designed to get your booty in action. What up, my people, my posse, my fellow crazies? I'm your host, Tiffany Carter, and I am a long recovering people pleaser with major boundary issues. And we need to address in a much deeper way this boundary stuff and how it's showing up in your career life, your business life, how it's affecting your bank account, how it's actually also affecting your health. And you might not realize it. My guest and I were just talking before we came on, and it is so common for highly ambitious women, men, entrepreneurs, people who are career driven, who are going after more things in life. There are these common things that we all do that until you're aware of them, they just become normal, and they cause so much pain and stress and discomfort in your life. And so many of you aren't even aware that's happening. So this is going to wake you up. It's going to make you feel very validated. And you're going to walk away from this episode being able to implement some things right away. But I just want to give you the heads up that when you've operated a certain way your entire life, it's not like, oh, there's a switch. I'm going to all of a sudden set all these boundaries and do all these different things. Yeah, I wish it worked like that. It really doesn't. So give yourself some grace with everything that we talk about. Don't now cause another problem and more drama in your life by running around and setting crazy boundaries with everyone and yelling at people. How do you like that for an intro, Barb?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Like, I'm a recovered codependent people pleaser, rescuer, fixer, and I was 52 when I got into 12-step recovery, which is where I learned to form boundaries. So I'm the person that you're talking to. Like, that was previous me. I didn't understand how fucked up my life was, my family was, my patterns were. The only thing that I was clear about was that I had a string of dysfunctional romantic relationships. That I knew, but everything else I had no idea. And so I'm really different than I used to be. And it's amazing.
When you look back in your career side of your life, like how you made money, how you showed up in work environments, that kind of thing. How did the old Barb, before recovery, before all the work you've done on yourself, can you share some areas where you didn't even realize it, but like there were no boundaries and it was causing a lot of like havoc in your life?
Yeah. Yeah. So I worked a lot of jobs, and then my career was really, I worked for 19 years at Yale University. I had the same boss the whole time. I loved her dearly, but I also just bent over backwards and super accommodated her and did a lot of things that I now know were controlling behaviors to try to get her to do things my way. I also gossiped a lot. People with healthy boundaries do not gossip. And what that did was it created an environment in which we don't fix problems, we talk about them and we make them worse. And so, because I'd been there longer than everybody else and I had more seniority than everybody else, I created this culture of expectation. We don't go to her and say, hey, this isn't working. We need to address it. We talk about her behind her back. We bitch and complain. We spend meeting time complaining rather than solving problems and getting stuff done. Um, I was at everybody's beck and call. I did have a reasonable boundary between my personal life and my home life. I will say that. Like, I was always like, I'm not going to be the kind of 50, 60, 70 hour week person. If there's a pressing thing, an event or something, I'm in, I'll be there, I'll take care of it. But I'm not working all day. But when I was there, I would drop anything for anybody. And so it was very difficult for me to get large projects done for myself because I was constantly doing things for other people. I'm still coming out of denial. I've been in recovery almost 8 years now, and I'm still constantly coming out of denial. What I'm realizing is I was a dick to people a lot and it was like a way for me to sanction them for not doing things my way. But I always thought of myself as like this kind, helpful, generous person. And it's not that I wasn't, but I was also a dick pretty frequently. I lived with a sense of urgency at all times. One of the things that I've learned as I've slowed down, that's a trauma response, was that like living with a sense of urgency and all the time. When you have a sense of urgency at all times and you're moving fast all the time, you cannot discern nuance. You can't discern nuance in other people and you can't in yourself. So it's very difficult to read your body's signals because your system is like, it's like on alert all the time. To really be able to follow your gut is almost impossible when you're living like that all the time. Because I was at everybody's beck and call all the time, it was like I had all these things that I had to be paying attention to, which of course meant that I didn't have to pay attention to me or my problems. And it also meant I was blaming everybody all the time for everything. And here's the thing, if everybody else is really the problem, you're screwed. You're screwed if it's really everybody else. The process of 12-step recovery and the process of learning how to form healthy boundaries really helped me discern, like the Serenity Prayer says, what can I control and what can I not control? What do I need to just accept? And what do I need the courage to change?
What I hear over and over again of thousands and thousands of people I have coached, to the point where there are very clear common patterns of highly ambitious women in particular, is they truly believe, and I was one of them, that everything was a priority. All these things on my to-do list had to get done, and they had to get done now, and I'm so behind. And even when I was maybe prompted or questioned by a therapist or a friend saying, well, why don't you just do the things that like are the most pressing? I would get snappy and be like, well, they're all pressing. They all have to be done. They all have consequences.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
I think that's part of the sense of urgency is another way to think about that. Like, I have to be on at all times. I think like in ACA, we talk about being addicted to excitement, which another way to say that is addicted to fear or addicted to chaos, really. And so for me, I lived in fight or flight mode my whole life. Having my system revved up equals life.
Like meaning like the feeling of being alive, like exuberant and energized.
Right. Like, calm and serene is boring because it's so unfamiliar. This is a perfect example of what I was talking about earlier when I said comfortable versus comforting. So being in fight or flight mode your entire life and having your system on alert all the time is comfortable because it's like a well-worn groove, but it's not comforting. It's actually very difficult. It's my body had a lot of tension in all different kinds of places all the time that I didn't know until it was gone. But what's comforting is something that actually gives you peace and serenity and calm and brings you comfort. And the thing is, pick your discomfort. Are you going to do the kind of discomfort that's comfortable but not comforting? So it's uncomfortable. It's going to get worse. That's the progressive nature of like dysfunction is it's going to get worse and it's going to accelerate, right? But if you pick the good kind of discomfort, which is the discomfort of changing your patterns to something unfamiliar, that is a temporary discomfort. It won't last for long because eventually you'll be comfortable with it. And there's healing on the other side of it. So all that shit is going to go away. The tension, the unease, the discomfort in your own skin. Like I didn't know that I wasn't comfortable in my own skin.
Right. Because it was, this is just life.
Right.
And I was sick all the time. I had adult cystic acne. I had these weird rashes on the back of my arms. I was always swollen and inflamed. And I just thought I was very judgy. I might have not said it out loud to someone, but in my head, when someone's Tiffany, you need to like slow down and rest more and meditate and do yoga or something. You know what I'd say in my head? I'd be like, this person doesn't fucking get it. They don't have a business or they're
lazy mofo.
Yeah, they're lazy or they don't have this or they have a rich husband or wife, or I'd come up with something in my head. What came up when you were talking about this for me is the fear of slowing down. And it really, even if it's someone who you don't have to be a business owner and you don't have to have 7 children and you don't have to have all that to have this fear. It's like this fear of slowing down. Because if I take my foot off the gas of productivity, there's a belief in there, I'm going to lose something. It's something I have to be very cognizant of to this day. Because you know that I'm very open about the fact that you guys, like I went literally to recovery programs for a workaholic. Like that's a real thing.
Right. Yeah.
Because I was like, if I'm not doing and I'm not producing and I'm just simply being, or as my word I like to use now, luxuriating, I could end up like living in a tent somewhere and lose everything. That's how dramatic that really was for me in my brain. Can you speak? I think it's an epidemic, really. I think it's a major problem.
Yeah. I mean, what came up for me when you were saying that is if I'm not productive, then I don't matter. Like I have to contribute. And to me, that's the codependence, right? So, I didn't even know what the word codependent was until I found it when I was looking for Al-Anon, when I hit my codependent bottom. And I was like, how is it possible that I've read 7 gajillion books? I've been in therapy for 37 years, never heard this word. And it's essentially that you are focusing on that which is outside yourself. So one way that my codependence manifested, and this is still coming to my consciousness, is I would go into, and I'm going to just talk about romantic relationships. So I happen to be heterosexual. I date men. So every man I dated, I can see now that I went into the relationship as if I was bringing a deficit to the relationship. So I have to add something to make it okay that I'm here, to bring us up to 0, because I'm bringing in a deficit. Now, I have high self-esteem, Tiffany, and I always did. Okay. So this is not about lack of self-esteem. What I realized over time is that I actually lacked self-worth. Because when I look at my behavior and I look at that attitude that I just described, that is not someone who feels worthy. So if you extrapolate what I just said about bringing a deficit into a personal relationship to the world, you feel like you bring a deficit to the world. So the way that you're going to make up for that is to contribute. And that means you have to be productive. You have to be doing shit in order to matter.
Like doing, giving, creating,
producing, creating.
And that's,
yes.
I see that play out when people come to me for business coaching and they're burning out and they're like, oh my God, if this is what it takes to be successful at like my passion, I don't know if I can do it. I must be doing something wrong. And they're charging like $200, let's just say, as an example, for an 8-week program.
Oh my God.
Where they're showing up for 20 hours live and there's workbooks and there's bonuses. And is that an example of how that can show up in business when you believe you're operating in like a lack? Like, I'm coming in at a negative. Like, I'm not at the level as these other people who might be doing something similar than me. So in order for us to be even, like you said, I have got to like either be the least expensive or over give to some extreme point.
Right. And as we were talking about before, those to me are indicators of a lack of healthy boundaries. So I do a lot of networking with especially women entrepreneurs. And I ended up creating this Feminine Biz Boundaries VIP Day because of that, because so many women entrepreneurs suck at boundaries. And that means things like they do not charge what they're worth. Or they've had a client for so long that they love and they don't want to increase their prices, even though they may have increased their prices with other people. Or they don't let go of toxic employees or colleagues or clients because they feel like they have to work with these people. Or they don't know how to delegate because they feel like they're supposed to do everything themselves, or they feel like they know the right way and nobody else can do it as good as they can, and all that sort of thing. It's like so many of that stuff gets cleaned up when you really learn how to have healthy boundaries. Because one of the things that I didn't really understand until I really changed and went from no boundaries to having really healthy boundaries is that people with healthy boundaries let good shit in. They don't just keep bad stuff out. So they let in things like support and help and praise and compliments and leisure time.
That is a mic drop right there.
Yeah, I know.
Wow. And so I know you're an avid listener of the show, which I love. Yes. And she's a fellow lover of the word fuck. So we love Barb.
Yeah. Can you tell? Yeah.
So
by the way, my middle initial is F, which stands for fucking. Barbara.
Oh my God. Nangle. I'm dead.
Okay. That's not amazing. Really. My parents would roll in their graves if they heard me say that.
But I like this. That's fun. It's Barbara fucking. That's amazing. I love that. So when this is so fascinating to me with the abundance and money factor, it sounds like what you're saying is if we don't work on our boundaries and we don't learn how to create healthy boundaries, you're actually blocking clients coming to you, opportunities and money. So can you kind of give us an example? Maybe you've seen in one of your clients you've worked with so we can wrap our heads around this?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So this woman was a graphic designer and a social media manager and a web person. And she was one of those people who had 2 clients that basically got her started in that world. She worked in the restaurant business and just started doing their social media for them. And then she had a background in art. So she just started doing graphic design and all this stuff. And so for her to set boundaries with those people and start charging them what she's actually worth, she felt like she was going to die. So I said, okay, let's do this. Let's come up with some pricing for new clients. Okay. Let's charge the market rate. What's the average? Even if you're not going to charge what you're actually worth, charge like the average. Okay. So she got a couple of new clients who did not bat an eyelash when she told them what her prices were. She started working with them. And she had a system of this is how we're going to communicate. You don't get to fucking text me every 17 seconds and tell me something's not working on my Instagram account or whatever. And she started to have this enormous sense of relief of, oh, wait, this is what it can be like. So she got reinforced for having her healthy boundaries because she was getting more money, doing less work, working in a much more pleasurable way with people, having systems that they were actually following. And so the contrast between those clients and the old clients was so enormous that she finally was like, I can't, because she showed herself, this is a sustainable business model for me to take care of myself in all of these ways and to take care of my clients and to work with people who actually want to work with me. Like these other people, they wanted her to manage everything on their social media. They wanted to be hands off. She's like, that's not
and they
what I
weren't
do.
ideal clients, you know?
No, precisely. Precisely. And that's why I think that's a good example of a boundary. What's your boundary? Who's your ideal client? It doesn't mean that you won't take somebody who's not your ideal client, but you market to your ideal client. So everybody's pretty clear. This is who I want to work with.
But the fear
That's a boundary.
Okay, people who I have are existing and I'm flipping the script, even if I do it very professionally and with love, right? I'm flipping the script on the money and the rules. I'm going to lose them. And the second fear is, okay, if I put it out there with pricing and all these things like I'm not going to do, and it's in this exact box, the fear becomes, I'm not going to get any new clients.
Yeah. When it comes to boundary setting, the reality is you may lose people, whether that's in your professional life or your personal life. And the thing is, those people are blocking your people from getting at your door. Like there's no room in your life for the actual people that you want to have. So everybody can relate to dating somebody. Like if you date the same fucking dude who is never shows up for you, he's emotionally unavailable, he calls you at the last minute and all that kind of stuff. If you keep having guys like that in your life and you keep saying yes to those guys and you're spending all the time with them, the guy who is going to show up for you and go the extra mile to let you know that he really cares about you and that he wants to know who you really are and he wants to be helpful and supportive of you, he can't get to you because you're so busy with this other guy. It's the same thing with clients. And
busy and resentful, like busy and you're edgy and resentful and exhausted.
Right.
Therefore, you're not, whether it's in business or personal life, therefore that's a repelling energy. It's not very attractive.
Exactly. Right. But people who are dysfunctional will put up with that shit from you because that's how they experience the world themselves. So here's the thing, when it comes to setting boundaries, that when you decide I also want to say, a boundary is a standard that you have for your life. This is what I want my life to be like, right? The part that most people think about is where you tell other people about I'm communicating my boundaries.
Like you're being a bitch, or you're being mean, or you're being like insensitive almost.
Right. And I think that one of the reasons that people equate that with boundary setting is because so many of us wait until we were pushed beyond our limits before we snap and set a boundary. And so to us, that's what boundaries are, is when you snap and you act like an asshole to people. But real healthy boundaries, you say with ease and calm, from a place of worth and a place of satisfaction and wholeness. It takes a while to get there. When you start setting boundaries, of course, the most difficult people to set boundaries with are people that you have known for a long time and have been around, because you're changing, like you said, you're flipping the script, right? You're changing the nature of your relationship. But the thing is, depending on how old you are, most of us are going to meet more new people than we have known old people, or that we still have around us, right? all those new people coming in are going to only know you with the boundaries. You're going to be like reinforced, like my client was with the new clients, reinforced like, oh, I get to be who I actually am with people. And I get to tell people the truth about what I like and don't like and want and need and prefer. And they don't leave me. In fact, they spend more time with me
or
because
spend
they can
more
trust
money
me.
with you or refer
Right.
people to you.
Because
It
you tell
sounds
the truth.
counterintuitive. It sounds like,
Right.
it sounds like, wait a second, I get to have my needs met and do what's best for me. And I actually then get to attract even better people, better clients, and even more money.
Yes.
Because that's the opposite of what you were taught in childhood or in some toxic relationship you were in or a toxic job. It's like, it almost sounds like bullshit.
Right. And some people it might be like, because they'll give up, they'll be like, oh, I tried setting a boundary and it didn't work out. It's like, here's the thing. A boundary that you do not enforce isn't really a boundary. What I say to my clients is those are hopes and wishes, right? It doesn't work like an invisible dog fence. Somebody doesn't get zapped. You have
amazing.
That would be, it would be. But it doesn't work like that. Like you have to actually have a consequence. And for most reasonable people, the consequence is you simply repeat the boundary, So like, let's say, like I used to have this guy who would just walk into my office. So I finally would close my door and then he would still just walk in. So then I put a do not disturb sign and he still came in. No, this is before I had boundaries. I didn't know, like I blamed him. I didn't know to say to him, that sign right there, it's for you. The do not disturb sign.
Right. I could see that. You'd be like, disturb. Is this guy an idiot? Like there's a sign. Right. Does he not read?
Right. Like he clearly can't read social signals. So I started enforcing the boundary by first closing the door and then putting a sign. But then what I did was I bitched about him behind his back.
Oh, absolutely. Right? I've done that.
So to me, that was my boundary. He didn't respect my boundary.
Can you believe this guy? What a dick.
Right, exactly. And I felt completely justified. Now I look back and I'm like, oh, my bad. Because I get to change something. So if I don't want him coming in my office unless he gets permission, then I need to come right out and say, please do not open my door unless you have been invited in.
How did he react? Do you remember when you said something to him?
No, I didn't say anything.
Oh, you never did? Oh, okay.
No. No, I just bitched about him behind his back. And I was like, what the fuck's wrong with this guy? Can't he read? But my deal was I could not directly communicate. And that is an important skill that you develop in the process of forming healthy boundaries, is directly communicating with other people.
And it is uncomfortable when you've not done it or you've avoided it most of your life, or the times you have done it, you did it with people who were very sick. And so there was a nasty response. Let me tell you, sometimes I set boundaries. Yeah. I recently, because I'm taking my final few private clients for a long time, because I'm setting a boundary with myself and I'm finishing the fucking book. Thank you. I just set and it's not a hope and a wish anymore. It's a boundary where I've announced it publicly. I'm taking accountability, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm doing the application calls right now, and I only take 30% of the people who apply, and I'm not. And while some people can go, oh my God, like that's elitist, God, that's like can be abandoning to people. Well, A, it's one, how you do it. And two, it actually would be very selfish and out of integrity for me to just take people just for their money. If I don't truly feel I'm either the best coach for them, or that I feel that my style and my techniques would actually work, or they would follow through. Some people just aren't ready. I had to say to a lovely woman yesterday, very successful in the corporate world. She has all the money. She wasn't hungry for it. She didn't want to start this business enough. I can't make someone want it. I can't do that for you. Yeah, you have to really want it. And then I am right there with you. And I had to say that to her. And
Yeah.
she didn't like it and then tried to convince me, no, 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 you misunderstood me. I really wanted it. And I said, I've been doing this for a long time, for 15 years. And this is, I had to say it direct on Zoom. I think it would have been a little more uncomfortable in person, to be honest, but I still would have done it. And I said, I've coached over 150,000 people in a variety of settings. I know in integrity when someone is ready, which is why I am by application only, because I take your money and your time and your business and your dreams very seriously. And you're just not at that point yet. And that's not me criticizing you. You're just not there yet. And she did not like it. And who knows, she might walk away and be like, that Tiffany she's a fucking bitch. She's terrible. I'm not listening to her show. I'm writing a bad review. Or what I think would probably happen at some point is she would go, wow, she actually told me the truth and she could have just taken my money. Do you guys see what I mean by that example?
Right.
But Barb, I want to ask you, because what's scary for people in any kind of business is if I now charge what believe I'm worth and what I want and have it set up in a certain way, then they go and try it. And let's say they put it on like a sales page, their program, or they're doing an application call or something. And it says how much, and then no one signs up and no one buys. Then they come back to Barb and go, Barb, I put it out there. I put the price, I said it. And now everyone's saying they can't afford it. See, I should go back to my lower price.
Yeah. I think I'm a big fan of energy. I think it's really meaningful and important. And if you don't believe that your shit is worth the price that's on the page, why would anybody else believe that? Like, you're putting out this I'm not worthy energy out into the universe. I've been lucky in that the coaches that I have worked with so far in my business have been people who are both about what is your energy and your mindset and what is your strategy and your operations. And every time when it comes to pricing, they go through this process with me where, like, how does that feel in your body? But as we were talking about earlier, if you're living in fight or flight mode, you can't discern nuance. You don't know how it feels in your body. So maybe you feel like you have butterflies in your stomach, but that's because you're in fucking fight or flight mode, not because that doesn't feel like the right price. And for me, can I go and have a nice sigh and be like, yeah, that feels like a really good number for me?
But because you've practiced this and implemented this. Yeah, I'll say like around, I have a couple things coming up and I got this gut intuition, right? Like you said, like you have to slow down slow down and not always be doing. And that's where the creative ideas come. That's where the subtleties in my body. And so I knew I needed to postpone this big annual launch I do. It's not that I'm not doing it, but something about the dates didn't feel right to me. And I appreciate what you're saying is it can be hard to discern, because what started coming up for me was there was a fear receptor. Oh my God, people were expecting it at this time, and now you're going to move it. And now people are going to buy other people's programs and not yours. And are you just doing this, Tiffany, because you're being lazy right now and you're just avoiding doing some of the work? How can we help discern if we're doing the right thing for ourselves, our business, our lives, or are we just doing some form of like subconscious self-sabotage?
Right. That's one of the biggest questions of life right there. What are indicators of unhealthy boundaries, especially for entrepreneurs? And I'm like, lack of self-care. That's something that we just don't really talk about. But if you are not resting, I personally meditate twice a day for 15 minutes. I also have lots of conscious contact with my higher power. Pausing is my number one tool of recovery. I should say pausing/breathing. And my nervous system regulation is a high priority for me. But I can't regulate my nervous system if I am on all the time. I have to rest. I have to relax. I have to do leisure activities. I have to enjoy myself. I was in this group this past summer called 21 Days of Magic with Amy Bernier. It was absolutely fantastic. And she gave us all these really good tools. One thing I have continued to do this day, I have a little dance party every day. Dance party equals Barb dancing alone to a song. It does something to my energy that is inexplicable. It's not like I've never danced before, but when I started doing these dance parties every day, it's all the shit that's in your brain goes away. And another thing I do is I use the Pomodoro technique when I work. I don't know if you're familiar
No, I've
with it,
never
but
heard
it's
of
where
it.
you work in a 25-minute segment and then you take a 5-minute break. And then after 2 hours, you get a 15-minute break. And I think I don't think I have ADD, but definitely have had a lot of attention things and had difficulty focusing. And I've always been very productive, but I was also a multitasker. I'm a recovered multitasker. When I started working for myself, I had done some research and really realized like multitasking is not effective. And what it does is it allows me to super focus on one thing for 25 minutes, which is long enough to get me into flow. And so I'm able to be really focused and productive in ways that I just wasn't before I was in recovery. And I think that has a lot to do with the trauma recovery that I'm able to do that. But then I take a 5-minute break and I live in a townhouse. So at minimum, I go up and down the stairs at least once during the 5-minute break. And you will be amazed at how much you can get in 5 minutes. And what that does is it also gives your brain a break. And so you come back and it's almost like it's a new day, or I come back at it refreshed. I do all kinds of things like that to support myself because I think there is no personal development program like being an entrepreneur.
Let's talk about this over giving thing and how over giving, even though it can seem like you're being so helpful and you can get awards and be praised for this and complimented for this. How do you know when over giving is unhealthy, when you're going too far with it, or when you're in a range where it's just because like genuinely like you're a heart-based person, entrepreneur, and it's coming from a healthy spot?
Okay, yeah. I can answer this from personal experience. So when I got into recovery, I remember saying to somebody, okay, I'm starting to see that there's this continuum of helpfulness, where on one end, we've got kindly, helpful, functional, healthy behavior. On the other end, we have dysfunctional, unhealthy, rescuing, enabling behavior. And I'm very clear about the two ends and the difference. It's in the middle. Where do you cross over? Where do you go, for example, from being helpful to being rescuing? And the woman said to me, it really has to do with your motivation. Why are you doing it? Are you doing it to be helpful to the person? Or are you doing it because you want them to like you? And I was like, I'm totally doing it to be helpful to them. But as that question sunk in, I was like, oh, fuck, I really am doing it. And it's not even necessarily so that they'll like me. It's so that they'll think good things of me or that they'll approve of me or they'll think that I'm kind or that I'm generous. And I'll tell you something. I used to think I was nice. I did these things because I'm a nice person. I want people to think that I'm nice, right? Well, guess what? It's not nice to be a people pleaser because people pleasing is dishonest and it's manipulative. So it's dishonest because you're saying yes to things you don't want to say yes to. Or maybe you're saying no to things you really want to do because you're afraid of what people are going to think because you care so much more what they think of you. So it's dishonest and it's manipulative because you're doing it because you want them to think certain things of you or to approve of you or like you or think you're honest. So nice people don't lie and they don't manipulate. So I personally like to focus more on being a kind person than being nice. I really had no fucking idea that I was a people pleaser. I remember hearing the term years ago and being like, I'm so not that. My friend Joanne, she's a people pleaser. But then as I started to get to know myself better, I was like, oh my God. So for me, Tiffany, one of the most important questions I ask myself to decide, is this, quote, the right thing for me to do or the right boundary? Or is this the healthy thing for me to do is what are my motives? What is my motivation? And then the other question I say is, does this serve me? And when I say, does it serve me? Does it serve my highest good? Would my higher power be proud of me in making this choice? And it is definitely difficult to get over the people pleasing ways, but I'm living proof that it's absolutely possible. And here's the thing, when we're people pleasing other people, we're not pleasing ourselves.
And you're going
right?
to displease people when you start prioritizing pleasing yourself. And guess what?
Right.
Some of those people gots to go.
Right. Right. Yeah. Here's the thing. I heard Brooke Castillo on her podcast say, I was just listening to it today, and she says, listen, if you're going to disappoint somebody, it shouldn't be you. Right. Not that you should purposefully disappoint people. That's not what she's advocating or what I'm advocating, but I do it out of choice. And that is the answer. Are you choosing? Are you actually choosing to do the thing for the person because it's what you want to do? Or do you feel compelled to do it because it's what you should do, or you're afraid of what they'll think of you, or it's what they're expecting you to do? It's about choice. Learning how to have healthy boundaries is really about making choices in your life. I call it living on purpose. I didn't know I wasn't living on purpose before, but now I actively choose. And the way that I guide my clients to do it is through their values. I start all my clients out with, let's work on picking out your top 5 values. Doesn't mean you don't value other things, but 5 is a good enough number that you can hold it in your head. It's not so big, but it's not so small that it's meaningless. And this goes to, you mentioned before about being in your integrity, that learning how to have healthy boundaries is all about shoring up your integrity. My podcast is called Fragmented to Whole: Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery, because that's my experience. I had this notion of being this bunch of fragmented pieces out there floating. They were floating around in space, and there was space between the fragments, and other people's shit could penetrate in between those spaces. And the process of recovery, and especially the part about forming healthy boundaries, helped me integrate all those fragments into one coherent whole. I got rid of the fragments that weren't me. So now I can be rocked by things that happen to me, but I can't be shattered by them the way that I used to, because I am whole. And whole things have boundaries. And another way to talk about wholeness is to use the word integrity. So when I talk to my clients about starting with their top 5 values, I have them make decisions about their lives, the standards of their lives, the boundaries of their lives based on their values. And what they find is they are often not living in alignment with their values, which means they lack integrity. When you are lying and manipulating people, you are chipping away at your integrity and you're not whole. It's a lot easier to be comfortable in your own skin when you're whole. And the way to be whole is to do things like tell the truth to people. For me personally, I think the core of going from not having boundaries for 50 something years and having such healthy boundaries that I now coach people on it is that I came to care more what I think of me than what other people do. And this has everything to do with the integrity. I learned to really keep the focus on myself. I think that's an incredibly important part of boundary setting, is learning to keep the focus on yourself and asking yourself things like, what do I want? Is this my business? What's my part in this? And how do I take really good care of myself? Those are like the 4 ways that I think about keeping the focus on yourself. But because I care more what I think of me, I am able to have healthy boundaries. And it doesn't mean I don't care at all what other people think of me. Of course I do. I just put my emphasis on me living in alignment with my own integrity more than what you think of me. And here's the other thing that I found. I've had a couple of things happen in the last year where it was really a really difficult situation. And in one situation in particular, I messed up. And it was because there was some big piece of information that I didn't know. But when I made the decision of how I was going to respond to the situation, I prayed about it. I checked in with my higher power. I decided, is this in alignment with my values? And I felt really good about what I did. And then it turned out, I found out, oh, you actually kind of lobbed a little bit of a bomb over here. I didn't know that because there was a whole big piece of information I didn't know. And the other person involved in the situation completely disparaged me to other people. And I was like, you know what? I literally did the best that I could with the information I had at that time. And this is info, not ammo. This is another one of my favorite sayings from recovery. And so when I say info, not ammo, what I mean is when you learn something difficult about yourself, whether it's through the process of recovery or as you're changing your behavior and setting new boundaries, it is info, not ammo. It is information for you to learn and grow from. It's information for you to integrate so that you can change. It is not ammunition for you to beat yourself up. I was basically scanning the horizon at all times, looking for reasons to beat the shit out of myself.
Of course. And that only knocks us down further and makes us more susceptible and more resistant to setting healthy boundaries because we're in this low level place. There's so much stuff here for people to process and wrap your head around. You guys are going to have to listen to this episode for sure again. So it really sinks in. And I know that you have a special offer for the listeners, which is so freaking generous of you. Can you tell us just a little bit about it? And then you guys, all the information for it, the details, how to sign up, the special code will all be in the show notes along with Barb's Instagram. So you can go over and say hi to her on High Power Coaching and her podcast. Everything will be in there, but I want her to tell you about this cool VIP day experience.
Yeah, so it's called Feminine Biz Boundaries. And as Tiffany said, the link will be, but it's go to femininebizboundaries.com and you'll find it. So this is a 1-day, one-on-one intensive coaching day where I work with you to build boundaries in your business. We start by aligning your actions with your values. We work on altering your mindset. I help you learn to keep the focus on yourself, develop empowered communication skills so that you can show up for yourself and have your own back. I also help you hold yourself accountable to because we're going to make plans of action for you based on your values. And then I help you hold yourself accountable to going through all that. And so anybody, well, actually the first 2 listeners of yours who sign up and the coupon code is Tiffany Boundaries will get a $300 discount.
I think I need this code tattooed on me. That's amazing.
You would like that. I thought you would like it.
So wait, the first 2 people get what? I'm sorry, I missed that.
The first 2 people who sign up, who use the coupon code Tiffany Boundaries, will get a $300 discount.
Oh my God. Thank you, Barb. I mean, you guys, listen, if you're tired of operating this way, don't tell yourself the lie that you can I'm going to start setting boundaries now and do it on your own. I'm not saying you can't start implementing some of the things that we talked about in the episode, but don't set yourself up to end up in a situation where you then beat yourself up because you don't follow through or it's harder than you thought. Like this stuff is very difficult to do on your own. I actually don't recommend it. I didn't get to the ZFG zone on my own. There was a committee that helped me get there.
You know, when I learned how to set boundaries in 12-step recovery. And when I did the steps the first time, I did it in a small group. And I didn't know for 2 years how important that was. I now call them my boundary buddies because I needed people to say to me, you are not a bad person. You deserve to set this boundary. Maybe you shouldn't say it like that. Or do you know that, like my friends literally said to me, get your fucking hands off the keyboard. Stop. Do not respond and don't pick up the phone and you can block that person. And like having other people who are on your side telling you, because the stuff in your head is like, oh my God, I'm a horrible person. And this was like the person I was setting boundaries with was an ex-boyfriend. It wasn't even my current fucking boyfriend. And I was worried that if I didn't respond to his email immediately, that he was going to think I'm a bad person. Who cares what my ex-boyfriend thinks?
Right.
But I did.
And that was great great practice. Some of you guys need practice. So the universe, your higher power, is going to give you, when you start committing to working on this for yourself, you're going to get tested. There's going to be a lot of people who test you, so you can practice and build this boundary muscle. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and dissecting this boundary epidemic that I feel is just out of control and under-addressed with women in business in particular. And this was
here,
so
here. Who are you telling? Yeah,
I mean, this
totally
is so
with
great.
You.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
Yeah.
You guys go check out all of her stuff in the show notes. Go say hi to her on Instagram. Go listen to her pod.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Thanks,
there's a
Barb.
shit ton of free resources on Instagram about boundaries. So just follow me at Higher Power Coaching, and then, you'll get a lot just from my Instagram account, because I just put stuff up there all the time about boundaries. So
thank you. Appreciate you.
You're welcome. I appreciate you too.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a 5-star review on iTunes. Not only will this make me super happy, but it will allow more listeners to find our special show. Simply help me help others.